and diverse process to find the most qualified candidate for this highly regarded position. Suba, I want to thank you for sharing your skills and your talents and your experiences to serve as the city's new Creative Laureate. We're very fortunate to have you on board, so thank you. Commissioner Fish.
Thank you, Mayor. And I'd like to begin by acknowledging that Eloise Damrosch is with us, the longtime head of the Regional Arts and Culture Council, and perhaps we could suspend the rules and give her a round of applause for her service. Mayor, we invited the former Creative Laureate, Julie Keefe, to join us, but she had a conflict. But I'd like to begin by thanking her for her service over the past 5 years as our Creative Laureate. As my colleagues know, in 2012, former Mayor Sam Adams appointed Julie as the city's first Creative Laureate. She is, of course, a champion for the arts, a highly respected community advocate, and a brilliant photographer. As our inaugural Creative Laureate, Julie served the city with distinction, and I think it's fair to say she set a very high bar for her successor. She now passes the baton to Subhashini Ganesan, and all of Portland is going to get used to pronouncing your name correctly.
She looks very skeptical about that.
Ms. Ganesan, known as Suba, is a leader in the regional arts community and practices, now here's where I need some help, Bharatanatyam.
Bharatanatyam.
That's pretty good. Try it again. I think you're close. Okay. Yes. Which, as everyone knows, is an ancient dance form from South India. She has contributed to the regional arts community through performance and education, and she's received too many grants and awards to mention today. Suba will bring passion and innovation and a wealth of experience to this position, and as the city's arts commissioner, I am so honored to welcome her to City Hall and to thank her for accepting the position. Suba, would you and Jeff Hawthorne and Amira Streeter please come forward for a brief presentation? And Mayor, with your permission, I'll turn it over to Amira Streeter, who is on my team, and I want to just say that she has worked long and hard on this process and kept us on track, and I really want to compliment Amira. This is the first big public process she's undertaken, and we've gotten lots of positive feedback, so I want to thank her for her work. Amira?
Right. Thank you, and good morning, Mayor and Commissioners.
Morning.
For the record, my name is Amira Streeter, and I'm a Policy Director for Commissioner Fish. And as the Commissioner was saying, we are very excited to introduce Suba as the Creative Laureate. It has been an incredibly exciting process to find the next Creative Laureate. Late last year, the City of Portland made a call out to the artistic and creative community to apply for the position. After receiving more than 30 applications, a selection committee gathered to review the applications and pick their top choices. The selection committee was made up of representatives from RAC, Commissioner Udaley's office, Commissioner Fish's office, myself, a community stakeholder, and Julie Keefe, the current and first Creative Laureate. After careful deliberation, the committee chose a handful of strong candidates, 4 finalists, who were interviewed by Commissioner Fish. Highly recommended by her peers, mentors, and a broad range of community members, we were all immensely impressed with Suba's current work in the community and the general thoughtfulness and enthusiasm she brings wherever she goes. After the interview, it was clear that she was a rising star, if not an established star already, and we are very excited to have her. In addition to her work, we will be asking for a small stipend of $5,000 to help with costs that are with travel and with her work, and just to support her over the next 2 years. Suba is the founder and executive director of New Impressive Works, NEW. As a South Asian female immigrant to the United States, she's a contemporary dancer and artistic director of the Natya Leela Academy. She's been working to express a lot of emotional depth through her work, and her work has been showcased at local and regional festivals. I really relish the opportunity to work with her over the next 2 years, and it is with great enthusiasm that I introduce and welcome Subhashini Ganesan.
Yay. Jen, or following her?
Either way.
Why don't we give her the
maybe
last
she's the
word?
finale.
Yeah, why don't we give her the last
Great.
word if you would say a few words.
Perfect. Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. I just want to say that there is no better person to represent the city of Portland at this point in time. Suba is an artist that we at the Regional Arts and Culture Council have grown to love and support. Over the last several years, we have provided her with technical assistance and project grant funding, teaching opportunities, and career development support. And in return, Suba has provided us all with exceptional craft, strong advocacy for a diverse and accessible arts community, and extraordinary insights to some of our most pressing challenges. So in addition to being a bridge between Portland City Council and the local creative community, part of her job description, we can also expect Suba to be invited to participate in a number of national conversations about what it means to be a global center of creativity. As you dispatch Suba as your ambassador, I hope you'll also invite her back often to ask for her opinions and to benefit from her observations. She has much to share about arts affordability, ways to improve public education, and whether we are distributing our arts investments equitably. Commissioner Fish, thank you so much for your leadership in finding a new and wonderful creative laureate for the city of Portland. Suba, congratulations and thank you. I really look forward to working with you.
For the record, my name is Subhashini Ganesan, Suba. Thank you, Mayor and City Council. Thank you to everyone involved in the selection committee and process. I'm deeply honored and extremely excited to serve as Portland's next Creative Laureate. I also thank Julie Keefe, our inaugural Creative Laureate, for her activism, work, and service. Julie has, in Commissioner Fish's words, set a high bar for this position, and I'm grateful that she has enthusiastically agreed to support me in these early months and show me the ropes. When I found out that Portland is the only city with a Creative Laureate, I thought, of course we are. I've lived in different cities in the US, and I can confidently say that Portland does have support systems to encourage the creativity of diverse artists in all levels of their professional careers. Even in these current times, with skyrocketing real estate prices, threatening affordability for artists and arts organizations, the city is listening to the artistic community and working with us to explore solutions. The Regional Arts and Culture Council works hard to keep finding new and creative opportunities to help multicultural artists and arts organizations thrive in Portland. The new Arts Affordability Act, which is in the works at City Council, is another positive example of the city's commitment to the sustainability of artists. As Creative Laureate, I will bring my voice and advocacy to doing all I can to connect RAC and the city to more diverse artists and arts organizations. Our city is the home to a rich network of multicultural professional artists from across the globe, and I look forward to bringing greater visibility for them so that more Portlanders can experience the rich global art forms that exist right here in our city. I want to bring my strengths to the city so that together we can find innovative ways to forge relationships through the arts. I hope to co-create efficient and accessible ways for multicultural emerging artists to receive mentorship from more experienced local artists who are enthusiastic to pass on their stories, knowledge, and resources. I also would love to find sustainable ways to expose youth from across our city to multidisciplinary and multicultural artistic experience with a keen focus on building a new generation of arts writers. a cohort of enthusiastic youth who not only enjoy going to plays, dance performances, visual art exhibitions, but are also able to speak and write about the universal themes in these experiences. I look forward to working with Commissioner Fish and his office, the city, RAC, artists, and arts organizations across our city to find unique and respectful ways to connect different communities so that equitable artistic experiences and opportunities are available for everyone across our city. Thank you for offering me this opportunity to serve Portland.
Thank you. We're honored to have
you. Mayor and colleagues, I think you now have a better sense of why we are so excited that Suba applied for this position, was highly recommended for this position, and ultimately accepted an invitation to serve as our second Creative Laureate. And we're just thrilled to have her on the team and honored that she's chosen to spend the next 2 years serving as our ambassador. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Fish, for your excellent work. Amira, well done.
Thank you.
Suba, thank you. We're so glad to have you on board. We're really excited about this. Thanks, Jeff, for all you've done.
Thank you.
Mayor, could we do a quick picture? I know we have a short
Sure.
session today, so could we take 1 minute for a picture?
You bet. Why don't we just do it right in front here?
Right here, right?
Put you in the middle.
Do you want to do families after? Okay.
A lot of
One,
whole
two,
paparazzi
three.
here. Look at this.
1, 2, 3.
I want to thank all the family and friends who took the morning off to support Suba. That's really wonderful.
All right, good morning, everybody. This is the morning session of the Portland City Council, Wednesday, January 17th, 2018. Carla, please call the roll.
Fritz.
Here.
Fish.
Here.
Saltzman.
Here.
Udaly. Here. Wheeler.
Here. From the Legal Department. The purpose of council meetings is to do the city's business, including hearing from the community on issues of concern. In order for us to hear from everyone and give due consideration to matters before the council, we must all endeavor to preserve the order and decorum of these meetings. To make sure the process is clear for everyone, I want to review some of the basic guidelines which I hope will help everyone feel comfortable, welcome, respected, and safe at the meeting and ensure that decorum is maintained for all of us. There are two opportunities for public participation today. First, we have an opportunity for people to sign up for communications to briefly speak on any issue that they would like. These items must be scheduled in advance with the clerk's office. Second, people may sign up for public testimony on the first readings of resolutions and ordinances. If you sign up, your testimony must address the issue being considered at the time. Please state your name for the record. We don't need your full address. If you're a lobbyist, please disclose that. If you're here representing an organization, that's helpful too. Individuals have 3 minutes to testify unless otherwise stated. When you have 30 seconds left, the yellow light's going to light up. When your time is done, the red light will come on. Emergency exits are located at both sides of the door. Your oxygen mask will come down automatically. Any conduct that disrupts the meeting, for example, shouting or interrupting other people's testimony or interrupting during council deliberations, is not allowed. People who disrupt the meeting face ejection from the meeting. If there is a disruption, I'll issue a warning that if any further disruption occurs, anyone who is disrupting the meeting will be subject to ejection for the remainder of the meeting. Anyone who fails to leave the meeting after being ejected will be subject to arrest for trespass. We don't want that to happen. If you support something, a thumbs up is good. If you don't like something, a thumbs down is good. We don't need people shouting out because that's just disruptive to people's testimony. So with that, Carla, communications is first. I understand we have one individual coming up to discuss one issue, then the subsequent 4 we'll call up together because they're here together. So issue number 43, people, please.
43, request of Carissa Modine to address council regarding hygiene access in Portland. And 44, request of John J.
Sorry, just 43
Just one. Okay,
she's here alone. Come on up. Good morning.
I'm not Carissa. They are sick today, so I'm Barbara Weber, and I represent Sisters of the Road Cafe.
I'll allow that today. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. So we're here to talk about hygiene access, and right now we do not have enough bathrooms downtown for all of us. There's only 9 loos, and if you go into a public place, you have to buy something to use the restroom. And you want to know why that affects everybody, and it affects everyone. It's not just a homeless problem. I did a little bit of research here. Human poop takes a year to biodegrade, and children mortality rate and the poor nutrition goes way up, okay? The health effects are intestinal worm infections, typhoid, cholera, hepatitis, 0.7 million deaths in children under the age of 5, 250 million lost school days from infections of diarrhea. And we talk about how it's affecting our environment. If this gets into our water stream, it causes an overgrowth of algae, okay? And like I said, it's not just a homeless problem. Hepatitis A is going crazy in California. They're fining people for feeding homeless people because they think that that's the problem. It starts there, but it spreads to the whole community, okay? Yesterday, I took a little survey of 5 homeless people, and they all said, you know, the showers down at TPI is the #1 place where they're able to take showers. There was only one person that said 6.5 weeks. They took 6.5 weeks without a shower, and they were female, okay? For the women, you gotta know how degrading that is. Your dignity is taken away, okay? You think about, when you think about that, you know, we need a hygiene center that can handle these problems, okay, for free. You know, our city would be healthier and happier if we were able to provide this care for everyone in the community, not just, you know, homeless, but what if we have immigrants that come into our city and need extra help? You know, this needs to be open to everyone in the community. I'm very married to this issue. You know, I've been homeless since 2015, almost by choice. I don't have a criminal record. I'm not an alcoholic. I'm not a drug addict. I'm disabled from 2010, and so that's why I ended up being homeless. You know, I don't make enough income to pay for a rental or a room, but I fight every day to survive. And you know, I'm so tired of the lack of dignity that is shown to the homeless community. And we are a community. We're not just drug addicts and alcoholics. There's a whole bunch of us that are able-bodied. And if you were able to just support us with housing or, you know, hygiene access, it would be a wonderful thing. Our life would be better, and so would yours.
Thank you. Excellent testimony. And just to underscore, I want you to let you know we're also looking at piloting with private sector help some of the mobile units that California is now experimenting with, in particular in San Francisco, both mobile shower units as well as mobile bathroom units. And what they're doing down there is they're taking their prototypes around to areas where homeless folks are known to congregate, and they're effectively measuring the results in the community. So we're very interested in that kind of a pilot here as well.
Yes.
Your point is extremely well taken, and I appreciate you also raising the broader public health issue around hepatitis. That is a huge concern
They're
that I have.
bleaching sidewalks, Mayor, down in California. It's really scary, and I would never want that to happen in Portland. This is my home. You know, I love my city, and I would never want them to be bleaching our sidewalks to protect our kids. Okay?
Thank you for coming in. It's nice meeting you. Appreciate it.
Nice meeting you.
Thank you. So, Carla, it's my understanding, and somebody correct me out there if I'm wrong, John Thompson, Phyllis Reynolds, Ted Kay, and Tom Cunningham, you're coming up together. Is that your intention or no? I'm seeing one no. Sorry?
One at a time.
You want one at a time? Okay, very good. You've signed up for that. Item 44, please.
Okay, 44, request of John J. Thompson to address council regarding how implementation of the Forest Park Management Plan is working to create true urban wilderness.
Good morning.
Good morning. My name is John Thompson. I'm a retired physician as well as a lifelong naturalist. I come bearing good news this morning. The Forest Park Natural Resources Management Plan is working, and characteristics of a mature forest and wilderness are beginning to return, in some instances having been absent for the last 100 years. Slide number 1 may look like fancy lettuce. It's a rare lichen, Lobaria pulmonaria. In the 1970s, this lichen was noted to be absent from the park, having disappeared when the park was logged earlier in the last century. It's associated with mature and old-growth forests and is a marker for pristine air quality. As our trees have gotten more mature, they have been able to filter the air of particulate matter, allowing this lichen to return. I was thrilled when I found it in 2016. It's the opposite of the canary in the coal mine and signals the return of high-quality air to the park. Slide number 2, many of you will recognize these chanterelles. Mushrooms you see are merely the reproductive structures of a fungus, which performs several tasks in the forest. Some function to break down woody debris, returning it to the soil. Others, like chanterelles, are mycorrhizal. Here, filaments of the fungus wrap around the roots of trees and shrubs, creating what's been termed the wood wide web. The interconnections allow plants to trade water, sugars, and nutrients, and to sequester toxins. These relationships characterize maturing forests and are an indicator of returning soil health. I was overjoyed when I found several patches in 2013. My final slide is a rare phantom orchid, so-called because it contains no chlorophyll and is entirely dependent on a specific old-growth mycorrhiza for its sustenance. It symbolizes the third major characteristic of old growth, interdependent relationships. While comprised of many individuals, the forest itself is a living entity, just as you are composed of many individual cells and an associated microbiome, and yet form something larger. I found this orchid in 2014 along the Wildwood Trail near Newberry Road. Thanks to the Forest Park Natural Resources Management Plan and the vision of you and your predecessors, the park is returning to a mature state and true wilderness. Because of its connection to the Coast Range, it's the only park in the city where this could occur. As Portland's population grows, demands of all types will put an ever-increasing pressure on the park for development. Please continue to recognize the unique nature of the park and support the wisdom of the Forest Park Natural Resources Management Plan in all of its requirements. We too are part of that interdependent web, and our health and well-being depend on it just as the phantom orchid does. I invite you to join me for a walk so I can show you these things firsthand. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, and thanks for sharing the photographs. Those are beautiful.
Thank you.
Next individual, please.
Item 45, request of Phyllis Reynolds to address council regarding Forest Park.
Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Phyllis Reynolds, and I am writing a history of Hoyt Arboretum. And in the process of doing my research, I came across records left by two curators, Ernie Fisher, who was curator from 1940 to 1970, and Jim Bray, who was curator 15 years after that. And they both were expressed in their reports anger about motorcycles in Hoyt Arboretum. The motorcycles destroyed the trails, they destroyed the plant life along and under the trails, and they were both very upset. I don't think there are any motorcycles anymore, but there are bikes. But think a minute about the size of a motorcycle tire and a mountain bike tire, and think about the damage that a mountain bike tire can do on a path. And then you should think about the trail maintenance that has to take place if there's any kind of a single track trail. It will require constant maintenance, because otherwise you're asking for a landslide in the long run, because it makes these bike tires will cut roots of trees and destroy the stuff along the sides. And then think about enforcing bikes to stay on the routes they're supposed to stay on, and how expensive that is. And I know that the parks budget this year, I think, is 15% less than last year. And so kind of factor in what the expenses would be of trail maintenance on a long trail, constant maintenance, and enforcement. Now, I am a member of the Portland Garden Club, one of the founders of Forest Park. And last year they wrote the council members, the commissioners, a letter supporting the 1995 Forest Park Natural Resource Plan. And they were very vehement about supporting the 8-foot wide track for bikes. And now I am dismayed to be sitting here once again before you, begging you to please not do a Trump-like maneuver and overrule the 1995 Forest Park Natural Resource Plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your testimony. Next individual, please, Carla.
Item 46, request of Ted Kay to address council regarding Forest Park.
Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Ted Kay. Please excuse my cold. I'd like to speak about off-road cycling in Forest Park. I served on the Forest Park Trails Policy Task Force in 1991 to 92. And I believe that the proposals for trail sharing and expanded single-track cycling conflict with the environmental, recreational, social, and legal mission of the park. The goals articulated by that task force are now in the Forest Park Natural Resources Management Plan as the trail management goals. They clearly argue against single-track bicycle trails and shared use of narrow trails. Specifically, the high speed of bicycles compared to pedestrians, the noise and disruption of bicycles, and the trail degradation from bicycles all conflict with the stated goals of the park. Specifically, Goal 1, protect flora, wildlife, and habitat. Goal 3, provide for quiet, reflective, spiritual experiences. Goal 6, minimize user conflict. Goal 7, promote user safety. And Goal 9, protect the system of trails, roads, and fire lanes. Furthermore, illegal bicycle use on trails throughout the park has increased significantly in the past 25 years since those goals were adopted, due to a nearly total lack of enforcement of existing laws and a resulting and growing sense of entitlement among many bicyclists. This can only be expected to accelerate if proposals in the off-road cycling master plan are implemented. I believe that those I served with on the Forest Park Trails Policy Task Force would join me in urging you to resist the calls by a small but vocal group to expand off-road cycling in Forest Park, a unique wilderness within our city limits that merits special protection. Thank you.
Thank you. And the last communication item, please, Carla.
Number 47, request of Tom Cunningham to address council regarding Forest Park.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning to you. Good morning, Mayor and fellow commissioners. My name is Tom Cunningham. I'm a lawyer in town, and I live in Northeast Portland. And first of all, I want to say, appreciate the parks. Just for an example, my kids learned how to swim at Grant. I learned how to swim at Montevilla, and my parents learned how to swim at Buckman. So we've been supporting the parks for a long, long time. I testify today to oppose the proposed off-road cycling master plan to the extent it relates to any further development in Forest Park. This testimony, by the way, I think you may have a copy of. First and foremost, Forest Park is much more than the nation's largest urban forest, always much more than just another asset ripe for the plucking by developers. Forest Park represents a unique habitat and wildlife sanctuary that is simply unparalleled anywhere else in the country. A place where pedestrians and wildlife alike can, quote, enjoy the peace, solitude, ruggedness, variety, beauty, unpredictability, and unspoiled naturalness of an urban wilderness. This, then, is the vision that the Portlanders affirmed and by ordinance, City Council adopted in the Forest Park Natural Resources Plan in 1995. The plan mandates the protection of Forest Park habitat, its soils, and its water resources. And the plan charges park managers with, quote, a duty to advocate at every level for the protection of park resources where Forest Park resources may be affected by the outcome. Briefly, I'd like to present the Council with 4 grounds for opposing off-road cycling master plan that would seek to further develop biker trails in Forest Park. First of all, biker trail development in Forest Park has already been fully implemented under the plan. Bikers' interests in developing routes in Forest Park were fully considered years ago as part of a 3-year comprehensive planning process, and they were resolved in the plan when the City Council adopted it by ordinance. During the process of developing the plan, representatives of the off-road biker community sat around the same table with biologists and the Citizens Advisory Committee and with members of the Technical Advisory Committee. Under the plan, pedestrians continue to have access to all the trails in the park. And bikers share use of many of those tracks. As a recommendation, the park authorized the tracks allowed for bikers to now extend more than 29 miles. Now they have 29 miles within Forest Park itself. I'm running out of time, so let me fast forward unless I have permission to extend my presentation. Second, biker trail development has already been fully implemented under the park's 2020 vision. Third, promoting further bicycle trail development in Forest Park breaches the duty to protect Forest Park resources because it fails to first develop other recreational areas which the plan mandates in order to relieve pressure on Forest Park and reduce user conflict. And fourth, as determined by experts hired by the city, Forest Park is not a suitable site for further off-road development. Those experts did study under last February under the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability, and their assessment was Forest Park South. This site is not suitable for off-road cycling trails because soils on the property do not infiltrate water well, and there's a very high risk of landslides.
Thank you, Thomas. And we've got, all of us here have a copy of your analysis.
Pardon me for running late.
Not at all. That was good. I appreciate you getting through the 4 main points there. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. Time-wise, time certain item number 48.
Mayor, can we do the consent?
Oh, great. Have any items been pulled from the consent agenda?
Yes, we've had a request for 51 and 52.
On the remainder of the consent agenda, please call the roll.
Fritz.
Aye.
Fish.
Aye.
Saltzman.
Aye.
Edaley.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. Consent agenda is adopted. Back to item 48, please.
Carla, what items have been pulled, have been set over in the regular agenda?
It's 51 and 52.
No, in the regular agenda? What item has been set over?
Oh, I'm sorry, you're right. There was a request from BES for item 56 to increase the contract with eBuilder, Inc. by $746,818 for additional software and license support and training for the capital project management software system to be rescheduled to next Wednesday. That's
Item 54 as well is going to be pulled back, so if you want to read that.
Item 54 is amend intergovernmental agreement with Portland State University for the Hatfield Fellows Program for training and leadership development to update the amount per fellow to $40,000 for a total contract not to exceed $1,200,000 for fiscal year 2017-18.
And colleagues, just a little commentary on this. This item is being referred back to my office at the request of Portland State University. After further discussion with BHR and PSU, we agreed that there is no need to increase the intergovernmental agreement funding level right now. And I appreciate the concerns and feedback we heard from people at last Wednesday's council session. To that end, a new item will be scheduled in February. We'll take a 4-year look at the master IGA for the program, and I certainly look forward to further conversations at that time. Dr. Kiesling was apparently listening to our conversation last Wednesday, and he has indicated to us that he will absolutely be present in February when this comes back to the City Council. Dr. Kiesling. It's fancy, huh? Item 48.
48, reduce the speed limit to 20 miles per hour on residential streets in Portland to support safe travel.
Commissioner Saltzman.
Thank you, Mayor. Excuse me. In 2015, the City Council voted to make Vision Zero the official policy of Portland. Vision Zero, in its essence, is to reduce all traffic fatalities, pedestrian fatalities, bicycle fatalities to zero by 2025. And we make it clear when we adopted that plan in 2015 that we would invest the money and take other important steps to realize the vision of a dramatically safer Portland. Throughout 2016, a committee of community members and public officials from the city and the region collaborated to build a roadmap to get us to that goal of zero. And out of that came the Vision Zero Action Plan and a commitment that we would work at implementing its 32 action items. One of those action items we promised to pursue was the authority to set our own speed limits on our local roads. We wanted this authority because excessive speed is one of the major factors contributing to traffic deaths. And from our research, we knew that if we could get Portlanders to slow down, we would save lives. Well, today, with help from Representative Rob Noss, we are delivering on that promise. As part of our 2017 legislative agenda, we made it a priority to ask the state to give us the authority to lower speed limits on our local streets. Representative Noss, who I believe is here today and will speak shortly, sponsored the legislation that successfully gained Portland this authority to reduce speeds on its local streets. With this authority in place, it is now a matter of authorizing PBOT, the Bureau of Transportation, to take the necessary steps to make this important change a reality. And I know all of you will support that effort. And I do want to, I'll ask now PBOT Director Leah Treat to come up here and lead off today's presentation, and then we'll have Representative Noss comment on his efforts, and successes in this endeavor, and then Dana Dickman will quickly walk us through some of the details.
Great, good morning.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioner Saltzman, Mayor, Commissioner Daly, and Fritz. Thank you so much. It's your leadership that has been so crucial and gotten us to where we are today. So again, thank you again for your support of Vision Zero. And we are poised to make a really significant step today in the city of Portland by making our neighborhood streets safer and more livable by reducing the speed limit to 20 miles an hour. And 5 miles an hour may not seem like much, but it actually is a big deal. That 5 miles an hour difference is really significant in reducing the severity of crashes. We all know that speed kills. The faster the car is going, the more likely a crash is going to result in fatalities. So by reducing the speed from 25 to 20 miles an hour, we actually make it 2 times more likely that a person will survive a crash. So our proposal is primarily around safety, but we also know that the benefits of dropping the speed limits are going to be more than just a reduction in the severity of crashes. We don't use our residential streets just for car travel alone. Our kids play basketball on the street. We have block parties in our streets. Our kids walk them to school, bike them to school. They go to the library. So reducing the speeds is also helping us make our neighborhood streets more livable. In 2017, pretty staggering statistics, we had 45 people killed by traffic violence in our city. That's one more than the fatalities in 2016, so it's an unfortunate upward tick in our fatalities, and we want to address that. But it's also, I think, really significant to point out that we had 18 more people die in traffic crashes in our streets than by homicide. So reducing that number is what really drives my commitment to this work. And we are making improvements, and I believe 2018 we're poised to make some very significant jumps in progress in our actions for the Vision Zero action plan. This includes not only our proposal today, but we are now going to be installing speed safety cameras on Marine Drive. Those should come online before the end of January. And we're installing a lot of safer crossings and rapid flashing beacons on high crash corridors. We're making millions of dollars of investments on those high crash corridors like Outer Division, Foster Road, and Outer Halsey. And I look forward to coming back to you to brief you on our progress at the end of the year about these big projects. But I also would like to put a marker out that this authority for setting speed limits on our residential streets, I hope is only the beginning. I would really like to see the city take on in 2019 in the longer legislative session trying to get more authority on our busy streets, our arterials and collectors. Yeah.
It'll be tough.
Yeah. So, well, with that, I think that's a proper introduction for Representative Nose, who has joined us today, who sponsored the legislation. And thank you so much for joining us. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Director Treat, for having me here. Members of council, I won't take up very much of your time. It was my pleasure to carry the bill, and especially since I'm not on the Transportation Committee in the legislature, it makes it a little bit harder. So as we try to get control of more of the high crash corridors, we got to find a legislator that's on the actual Transportation Committee to put a little pressure on the chair and ODOT. I'm grateful for the chair of the House Transportation Committee, and I think Speaker Kotek leaned a little bit on her, and they leaned a little bit on ODOT, and we did get a compromise. Portland is the only city by statute that's going to be allowed to lower its speed limit. Surprisingly, many of the other towns and communities in our state did not want this authority, and I won't get into the dynamics of that. But we did, and we were able to carve out an exception for our city in the statutes, and it was my pleasure to carry the bill, and I'm glad we're going to make a little progress on this.
Thank you. Great. And with that, I'm now going to turn it over to Dana Dickman to walk through some of the details.
Thanks so much, Leah, and thank you, Commissioner Saltzman, Rep. Nose, and our legislative team for all of the leadership to bring this bill forward and really make streets safer in Portland. I also just want to take a moment to thank all the staff that have been working to see that we can implement this in an efficient and timely way. We've had folks from the Active Transportation Division, our Vision Zero team, traffic operations, maintenance, Portland Police, Portland Fire, and our communications teams all working to figure out how to do this seamlessly. And also just thank you to all of the community members that have been advocating for safer streets and safe speeds in Portland. Today, we're really looking at changing speeds to support safe travel on residential streets. These are the streets that most of us live on. This is about 70% of Portland's transportation network. I'll walk through how this change supports our broader safety goals and then get into some of the details of how we're actually going to do it. The proposed ordinance is fairly simple. As Commissioner Salzman said, we're basically asking for the authority that was granted to us by the legislature to be implemented through this ordinance. We're asking to drop the speeds on all our residential streets to 20 miles per hour. Sign installation should take about 2 months, and we are hoping to have all signs switched over and have it take effect by April 1st, should the ordinance pass today. So part of the reason we're here today, again, is that we gained authority this summer, but it became effective January 1st. So we've been moving towards starting this process early in the year. I also want to call out that this supports broader safety goals that we have, and that we are reducing speeds not just on residential streets, but on our high crash network as well. So this is combining efforts and really part of a holistic approach. We also know that community members are really concerned about driving speeds on our residential streets. In a recent survey for our pedestrian plan, PED-PDX, it was cited as one of the top 3 barriers to walking, even more than high speeds on arterials and collectors and major streets. We also hear regularly from parents and students about their concerns when they're walking to school on residential streets about high speeds and concerns about safety. So this fits with our Vision Zero goals, but also, as Leah said, really fits with what the community is asking for and broader livability on our neighborhood streets. It specifically is called for in our Vision Zero action plan. This is phase 1, as Leah said, of really moving towards a slow and safe Portland. Our speed action, SD2, specifically asks for gaining local authority to reduce speeds on local streets. This is just a first piece of that. So let's talk about what do we mean when we say residential street. It's not necessary to memorize the ORS, you can see, but I just wanted you to be, to be clear that there is kind of a technical definition behind this term. First, this doesn't include federally classified collectors and arterials. It does not change speed limits on streets that already have an existing speed order. That language around that this is a 5-mile-an-hour reduction on streets with a statutory speed for residential streets, which is currently 25, so those will be brought down to 20. And it doesn't impact streets where we have a significant mix of residential and business. This is truly residence districts. So when we think about this, you know, what are Portlanders going to be seeing when they're thinking of residential street? I think one of the main things we can think of is they're typically streets with no center lines. There are also places where bikes and cars tend to share the same space. They are also places where, again, as Leah said, these are places where our children play. These are places where our seniors come out and walk. These are the streets that we use to get home. These are the places that we think of when we think of our neighborhood. They really are our collective front yard in Portland. We will have some residential streets that will still be 25. This is a typical place. This is 15th and Belmont. You can see it still has the center line. It has residences on it, but it will also have businesses mixed in, and it functions and is classified as a collector in the street. So I just want to call that out, that not every street that you see people living adjacent to is going to be classified as 20 under this ordinance. This map shows the streets that this will apply to. Obviously, you don't need to read this map. It's intended to show sort of the magnitude of it. It is about 70% of our streets. It's many of the places, like as I said, where we all live. This map shows the streets that will not be affected, and I want to point out that this really shows many of our high crash network streets, but it also shows some of the arterials and collectors that you're using to drive through Portland. So those streets will not be brought down to 20 miles per hour under this ordinance. Again, I want to reiterate what Leah said before, that 5 miles per hour really does make a difference. You can see from this graphic that we've used consistently through our discussions about Vision Zero that a person driving or a pedestrian hit at 25 is twice as likely to die from that crash. Speed increases the likelihood of a crash and also increases the severity of injuries sustained in the crash. So this just goes over a little bit of how the timing of the ordinance would be implemented. As I said earlier, the sign update is expected to take about 2 months. As we've been working with our maintenance team, they've said that they believe that they can do all of the changeovers in February and March. We will be starting and moving through the city based on safety criteria. So we're going to be starting in East Portland, moving up to North Portland, and then moving west to implement all of the signs. Again, we expect that all of those will be complete by April 1st. This is going to be supported by a communications campaign. There will be 2 campaigns, one that starts kind of immediately, that's getting the word out about the change, and then we have planned a broader speed campaign that will be looking at speeds, not just residential speeds, but aligned with our Vision Zero messaging, and I'll talk about that in a minute. So just,
I see you have all the key milestones. What's not on this slide is enforcement. So is that for a future conversation about how you're actually going to enforce it?
Yeah, so I would say that our intent is to stick fairly true to the enforcement strategy that we have right now, and Captain Krebs from our traffic, from the Portland Police will come up and speak later, but we will still continue to focus on the high crash network. But as we get concerns and complaints, as we do now through 823 Safe, we will go out and do some targeted enforcement.
I'll just say anecdotally that, I was in spending some time the last couple days in Northeast Portland. I was on Fremont. I was in some of the smaller residential streets. And I was just trying an experiment, which is to actually drive to the speed limit. And what I got was a lot of angry people behind me gesturing because I was slowing them down and engaging what I thought was dangerous behavior. So I think I fully support what we're doing here, but I think there's a big education piece and there's a huge enforcement piece because people are not getting the message right now. Some people are not getting the message.
Yeah, thank you.
And since this is an emergency ordinance, in fact, the speed limit is down to 20 as soon as we pass it, is that correct?
The way that we have been discussing it internally is that once the speed sign has changed on your street, you should be obeying the sign that is there. But that's going to roll out through the city, and so that what we're trying to message to the public is that everyone should be going 20, whether you see a sign or not, by April 1st, because during this period there will be portions of the city that are signed as 20 and portions of the city that are still signed as 25.
Well, and there's also a lot of streets that aren't signed at all.
Absolutely, so, and that will continue to be the case.
But so the de facto speed limit as of when we pass this is 20 miles an hour.
Wow.
Actually, I don't know. We'll follow up.
Yes.
I actually don't know if that makes it.
My understanding, based on our discussion with the city attorney, is that the 25 mile an hour speed limit signs need to be down before we would want to enforce on those streets.
Well, yeah, if there's not even a sign, there's not likely to be any enforcement. But I guess my point is, let's get people doing this sooner, as soon as possible.
Agreed.
So I have communications concerns along the same lines. As we have really significantly changed our city streets, adding bicycle infrastructure and changes for pedestrian safety, I think informing the public has been a challenge. And I know that where I learned that the speed limit for residential streets is 25 miles an hour is the Oregon Driver's Manual. So if we have thousands of new drivers coming on the road who have learned that the limit is 25 miles an hour, when in fact it's 20, I think that's going to be a challenge. So that's something we need to look at. And I also share the concern that there are no signs in my neighborhood for residential street speeds. And as Commissioner Fish mentioned, when you go the speed limit, you can provoke aggressive drivers. So.
Let me speak to just a few of the things about the placement of the signs. So one of the things that we're going to be doing is removing about 950 of the existing 25 miles per hour signs, and we're replacing them with about double what we have now, so 2,000 signs. We looked at a method to create a more consistent approach than we currently have to placing residential speed signs. A lot of the signs that are placed around the city are due to various different legacies where we might have a cluster of a bunch of them in one neighborhood and none in another. So our approach is to create some a more consistent signing throughout the city. What we've done is we've looked at street connectivity and places where we believe that there's potential for cut through. So cul-de-sacs and streets that only go a couple of blocks were sort of immediately tossed out as places where we would absolutely need to sign. But places that are connecting or parallel to large arterials where we think that there's a significant potential for cut through were immediately flagged as places for signing. And then also places where we expected to see more kind of multimodal traffic, more pedestrians, places that served large bus stops, schools, parks were also flagged for signing. So we have a more consistent approach throughout the city. And like I said, we're nearly more than doubling the number of residential speed limit signs through this process.
So is there any way to, I mean, do we ask DMV to alter their manual or hand out supplemental material?
Yeah, it's a really good point that you're raising, and it's something that we have talked about with our task force, and I believe it's actually in our Vision Zero action plan to try to update the driving tests to be more frequent. Right now it's every 8 years, and so many things change over 8 years, 1 and 2. It's not really reflecting the most current laws. So it's something that we have on our list to take on in the coming years in the action plan. But I also want to say that to the point of education, I mean, it is absolutely true that in order to be effective, you need engineering, education, and enforcement. That's the trifecta to get change happening in the city. In April, we're going to be launching a pretty robust education campaign about speed and safety in the city. And there's, you'll also see in our budget ask, we are going to be asking for additional general funds to fund more education and encouragement campaigns for Vision Zero, especially in East Portland, where we have the disproportionate number of crashes.
Great. And I mean, the cut-through issue is huge now with people using GPS. I was coming home from the beach in the snow, and the recommended cut-through in my GPS was Germantown Road.
Yes.
Luckily, we had four-wheel drive. But shortly thereafter, the road was closed. So
yeah, it's a pretty deep challenge. We are consistently in conversations with Waze and other folks to try to see if we can keep them off our greenways and off of our school zones. So far, we can't do that, but we recognize it's a significant problem. I just want to speak a little bit more to what Leah said about the safety campaign. We have a speed-focused safety campaign that will be launched this spring that will be coordinating with our residential Speed 20, but will also be targeted at just getting people to think about their speed citywide. We know that almost 50% of our crashes have speed, our fatal and serious crashes have speed as a factor. And we hear from community members every day that they're concerned about speeding in the city. Thank you.
Thanks.
Very good. Any further questions to the panel?
I have some questions.
Commissioner Fritz.
Thank you. This question has been asked to me by a constituent. How much does it cost to change the signs?
It's about $150 per sign. So overall, to implement this legislation will be $300,000. That includes the taking down of the old signs and installing more the 2,000 new ones.
And did you say 47 deaths last year?
45.
45.
Yeah. So if we get half of those, that would be very much money well spent. Currently, there are residential streets where it goes down to 20 by schools. Does the law allow us to further decrease it by schools?
I don't think so. No.
I don't believe so.
Okay, so that's something that we're going to need. Because I think there's definitely a trigger to me.
Yeah.
I've got to slow down because there are children. Let's
Yeah.
watch out for children. So I think that's something that we'll need to look at, even though many schools are on
That'd be hard
collectors and
to pass.
arterials.
Yeah,
But there are some that are not.
It's all hard to pass, though.
Yeah. We know you can do it, Representative
Oh, yeah.
Nose. We'll be right there behind you.
Aren't you glad you came today?
I am, actually.
I'm glad you came. I'm always glad when you come. Reader boards. Can we get some more reader boards? I've noticed even on the arterials, the bus slows down when it's obvious that it's going
Yeah.
too fast.
We just actually ordered, I think, 11 more that we are placing out, but we've been getting more requests for them for the solar boards that we can move. So that's a great request.
Yeah, I would like to encourage us to do that. I mean, we're not allowed to have more photo
But we
speed
can have
cameras,
the
right,
speed reader
except in
boards.
designated places.
Mhm.
But to me, the encouragement or the awareness, it's all about the education, right? That
Absolutely.
You're going too fast, flash, flash, flash. You're not going too fast, go.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I would very much support those. And I would say not just the ones that move around. There's certain places
Permanent
where
fixed
you
ones.
know people are going to go too fast all the time unless they're reminded not to.
Can I ask a question? How flexible are those, when you say reader boards, those are the things that tell you what your speed is?
Yeah.
So the two that I'm most familiar with are the one near the University of Portland along the bluff. When you're heading back downtown and you make the turn, there's a big sign that tells you your speed. And there's one near Legacy Emmanuel on the west side of the hospital. There's a sign. Would it be possible to program it so it says, this is your speed and this is the fine you'd be charged if you were pulled over? I sometimes think people disconnect from actually what the punishment is, and I've often wanted to go up to the person who does an illegal U-turn in an intersection and is on their phone and just pull them over and say, I just did a rough back of the envelope, that'll be $1,000, so let's be a little more careful, because I don't think people connect necessarily to the fine.
Yeah, so Commissioner Saltzman actually asked us the same question when we were preparing for this, and the speed reader boards are not able to be programmed to this. The technology doesn't exist to do that,
But
unfortunately.
isn't the fine always the same?
No, like if you're talking on your cell phone, it starts out at sort of a low level and it increases pretty significantly.
But the speeding fine.
Oh, that I don't know.
So we could you couldn't have a change in it. Somebody knows the answer to this and they're going to come up and tell us later. But yes, you could have a sign that said, oh, you could even have a sign that would say minimum fine X.
We have some expertise here. Yeah.
I'll just answer that quick question for you. It
Tell
goes
us
up in
your name,
10-mile-an-hour increments.
Can you state your name, please?
I'm sorry. Sergeant Ty Engstrom, Traffic Division, Portland Police. So it goes up in 10-mile-an-hour increments, the fine. So you have a Class A violation is the highest, B, C, and D is the lowest. So D would be 1 to 10 miles an hour over the speed limit and so forth on up. So the fines go from, down in the low 100s to mid 100s. The Class B is $270 and then all the way up to $440, I believe,
So we
for
could
Class
put a
A.
sign that said fine and then put the range, the lowest to
Or
the
maybe
highest,
it could be color
right?
coordinated or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. But there are several different fines for all the different violations.
Commissioner Fish, I think that's a really good idea.
Well, someday when we become a quote-unquote smart city, the board will say, Nick, slow down, or else.
We'll tell
And
your
then
wife.
it'll show up on my inbox at home, the ticket, the admonishment.
That'll be a different meeting.
Could I ask you a question about the signs? I wasn't really clear on one detail. You're taking down the 25-mile-an-hour signs. Are those then going to become the 20-mile-an-hour signs, or what happens to those signs?
We have we make our signs in-house, so we have a big sign shop, and they'll just go into our inventory to be reused.
Very good, excellent. Glad to hear it. Thank you. Any other questions of the panel? Is there a second panel, Leah?
I don't think so.
Well, we had Captain Krebs.
There's testimony, I believe.
Okay.
Invited.
Oh, he's going to testify, okay.
You're just going to testify on open, if you want to come up first, Captain.
Well, thank you, Representative Nose,
Yeah, thanks,
for your
guys. I have
leadership.
to go back to my other job, so I'm gonna.
Thank you
I'm
so
not gonna
much.
be able
Yeah.
to stay and watch
Appreciate
you
it.
vote on this, but I do appreciate it.
Thank you, thank you.
Come on up, Captain.
Good morning, Mayor and Commissioners. I'm Mike Krebs. I'm the captain of our traffic division, and I support this 100%. You heard folks talk about how it could reduce injury and prevent maybe a fatal crash. I'm telling you, it could actually prevent a crash. When you are driving 25 miles an hour, It takes you 59 feet to stop. From the time you see the issue going on, you think about it, apply your brake, and come to a stop, it's 59 feet. At 20 miles an hour, it's 42 feet. And so that's an entire car length. So you can see, I see commercials like on insurance commercials, and you'll see a car drive down, there'll be a collision, then they rewind it. If you rewind it going 20 miles an hour instead of 25, there will be no collision. And so I think not only will we reduce actual injuries and fatalities, we'll actually reduce collisions overall. To the point of enforcement, I know Commissioner Fish brought that up, and that is a concern of mine also. And what I see here going on is that we will continue to enforce on the major crash corridors. But I also have, you mentioned, you saw Sergeant Ty Engstrom. Ty's in charge of our trackets, and Ty assigns police officers when someone calls in and says, hey, I have speeders on my residential street. Ty assigns that to a police officer. They go out and they do some radar, they do some enforcement. We also do missions on the residential streets too. So I can't tell you I'm going to increase enforcement on these streets. The enforcement will stay about the same. One thing I think is important too is that there are some people that will just always speed. That's just what they do. And they'll drive 5 miles an hour over the speed limit. So think about this. So if we reduce it, right now the speed limit's 25, and most of those speeders are probably traveling about 30, 32, something like that. If we reduce it by 5 miles an hour, it's likely they'll be driving 25 or 27 miles an hour. So I think that most folks will try to push it a little bit, but I think with the reduction of speed, people will try to get as close as possible to that 20. I think if you were to ask everyone in this room right now, I think most folks probably drive as close as they can to the speed limit. I know there's those outliers and stuff like that, but I think this 20-mile-an-hour speed limit will slow the speeders down too. One thing to keep in mind is the majority of folks driving on the residential streets are your friends and neighbors. So there's also peer pressure. I guarantee you, your neighbors know what kind of car you drive, and you know what kind of car your neighbors drive. So a little bit of a peer pressure thing, like, hey, man, I can't believe Joe's speeding down the street. The speed limit's 25. So I think the peer pressure, it's not so much peer pressure on division or something like that, but you go down a residential street, you know who travels that street, and I think there's some peer pressure involved too. So, you know, it's, this is a long time coming. Sometimes folks will say, does it take a fatal crash to make changes? Well, no, actually we're being proactive. Let's change it now before we have a series of fatal crashes on our residential streets. This is a big deal, folks. I'm telling you, I've been a cop now for about 37 years, and I've been in multiple fatal crashes, and I don't want to see any more. And I feel confident this will prevent somebody from either getting killed or seriously injured or a collision at all. So, questions? I hope that, I mean, it's a big deal. I'm happy for this.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, Captain.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate it very much.
You bet.
How many folks do we have signed up, Carla?
We have 10 left.
Very good. Next three, please.
Are Terry Parker, Mary Sipe, and Jim Wittenberg.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'll jump right to it. Keep things moving. I'm Mary Sipe, and I just want to say I fully support this. I think it's a great idea. I want to compliment everybody that's been involved in this. My expertise during my career was in project management and organizational development, and the amount of comprehensive information that was made available by Commissioner Saltzman on the web, what was available on the agenda item, and the information that's been given here today, I think is just incredible. It gives a wonderful background of how we got here, and the planning of the project, the implementation of the project is just, you guys should all get gold stars. I think this is just incredible, and it gives me a lot of confidence in the fact that this is possibly going to be effective. I do want to echo some of the sentiments of Commissioner Fish, your concerns about communication and enforcement. I think that's the first thing that came to everybody's mind probably when they learned about this. And one of the things that I was just sitting here thinking about was we were talking about the reader boards. And you know, it's really funny. When you're driving on the freeway, you look at your speedometer often because you know there's state cops on and you don't want to get a ticket. But if you think about when you drive around the city, how often do you look at your speedometer? And I think it would be really interesting because, again, these reader boards, I believe that every vehicle that is operating on the road has a speedometer. And they have these big digital ones now, and I think we all have the ability to know just how fast we're going if we just take a look at our speedometer. And I was thinking that maybe part of the communications rollout could be a slogan of something like check your speed or something of that nature. You know, don't drive around waiting for a reader board to tell you how fast you're going. Be aware of how fast you're going. Think about that. As somebody who walks everywhere and no longer has a vehicle, I can tell you that it is treacherous out there. And when people are driving, they're not looking for pedestrians, they're looking for cars. And if there's a car, they slow down, they stop, you know. But if there's a pedestrian, they just don't even see you there. And I think this whole idea of reducing the possibility of even having a collision or the, you know, the intensity of injuries or potential fatalities by just reducing by 5 miles an hour is an incredible thing to think about. And I think it also kind of, I saw this big picture in my mind about, as a society, just in general terms, we all need to slow down by 5 miles an hour in our whole, everything we do in life, because that's what I see on our roads. Rush, rush, rush. Everybody's under pressure. You got to get here by now, and you got to do this, and you got to do that, and there's so much traffic, and blah, 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 and everybody, by the time you get to where you're going, you have no idea what transpired during that, say, 15 or 20-minute drive that you just took. We're just all so preoccupied and distracted. And so, everybody, slow down, take a deep breath. Perfect timing.
Perfect timing, perfect message. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. My name is Terry Parker. I live in Northeast Portland. I support the concept. However, reducing the posted speed from 20 to 25 on residential streets is more of a feel-good measure than a reality check addressing a problem. The majority of crashes that involve fatalities take place on high-volume thoroughfares. Even with unprecedented population growth and higher densities, PBOT has been reducing motor vehicle capacity. More cut-through traffic with higher speeds on residential streets is a self-induced byproduct from road diets and force-feeding alternative mode infrastructure down every city thoroughfare. Reducing motor vehicle travel lanes such as on Foster Road will not only create more congestion and thereby more emissions, but the dollars will be wasted and that it will create more problems elsewhere, including on residential streets, that will likely include spending more money that may or may not solve anything. Even though bicycle activists like to use quirky little sound bites like 20 is plenty, most drivers actually abide by traffic control devices and the basic rules of the road, thereby driving within the speeds that the road conditions allow. On the other hand, because there is little to no enforcement or fines, the majority of bicyclists disregard stop signs, disobey traffic signals, and otherwise snub the rules of the road. All too often, this mayhem includes a bicyclist getting killed or somebody getting hurt because a bicyclist is riding faster than the conditions warrant and cannot stop in time when something suddenly blocks a line of travel. An example of this occurred on the Interstate Avenue Hill, where a speeding bicyclist was unable to stop and killed running into a garbage truck. Instead of altering the bike lane to slow down bicyclists, PBOT added infrastructure to eliminate right turns at where the crash occurred. For bike paths adjacent to parks and on multi-use infrastructure shared with pedestrians, bicyclists need to travel no faster than walking speed. Indeed. With continued population growth and self-driving cars on the horizon, there's an immediate need to increase motor vehicle infrastructure and make more room for cars citywide. PBOT and the city also need to divest from the car-hater mindset and the attempts to create socially engineered bicycle-centric society. Not everyone, including seniors, can or wants to ride a bicycle. Instead of just profiling motorists, if Vision Zero is to become even close to a reality, motorists must be proportionally and adequately represented at the table on all PBOT committees. Bicyclists must accept the responsibility of compliance with all traffic laws, and pedestrians must be better educated about looking both ways and making eye contact with drivers before crossing streets. Additionally, just like with seat belts, bicycle helmets need to be made mandatory for all riders. And one other note that I didn't put in my thing, is that these new street lights, you can't see pedestrians at night in dark clothing like you could with the old ones. I noticed it immediately. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Good morning.
Hi. The reason that I'm here right now is that on December 19th, I contracted RSV, which is a virus, respiratory virus. It's the sickest I've ever been. I mean, my heart attack and my stroke were nothing compared to this disease. And I've been in and out of the hospital trying to resolve it. That's why I wear the mask, because I had another coughing jag this morning. It's a childhood disease, they tell me in the hospital. I must be going through my second childhood now. So this confirms it. So if you'll just give me a little bit. I never go anywhere without my dextromethorphan and my guaifenesin anymore. I have this little sign because in going through the papers, I had plenty of time the last month that I've been home. I've gone out twice for a total of about 3 hours. This signage started with a big sign, which many of you have seen. Was started in 1998. 1998, 20 years ago. It's taken 20 years to get the city council to acknowledge that this is a problem in the legislature. But, I'm a very patient, determined guy. I've been in lobbying now for 50 years right now. And so I just went down with Tom Hartung to Salem 50 years ago. I was thinking, they haven't killed me yet, so I suppose I'm still going. The first time I was in the city hall was with Terry Shrunk, the mayor of this town. And he brought me in because he was upset about the drug problem, and that we had started a group with Terry Baker in it and Jim Grella, and he wanted to know more about it. And he sent a policeman out to get me and brought me into City Hall. And the first time I told you was in Salem was 1998. That hooked me on politics because we were doing something. And I quit pharmacy and got divorced at the same time because I wasn't making enough money, I suppose. Now, what I'm most concerned about is I lived on Hawthorne Street 20 years ago. And on 22nd to 20th was an area that I couldn't get across the street because of the traffic. And they weren't just going 30 miles an hour, which is speed limit, they were going 60 miles an hour down that street, 50 and 60, and I could not get across, so I had to go down to 20th to cross the street to get the bus. And I used to ride the bus all the time because I didn't have an automobile at that time. I'm living with a bunch of people that can't get 2 nickels to rub together right now in the Unthank Plaza. I wanted to see what poor people had experienced in this town, and believe me, it's awful. They saw you on television the other night, and it made them angry. It made them really angry in there. And I've never seen any of you out, I'm thinking, in the 3 years that I've been there.
Thank you.
3 years, and you've never stepped in the doors of that place. You should come out and see how the other people live. People don't make $100,000 a year.
Thank you.
And it's just hard to acknowledge that people can be that poor and still be citizens, and the thing is still ask for this. But watch, I don't go out at night anymore because of the traffic. I don't go to movies. I don't go to events. So I don't spend any money on people. So Tim Boyle and some of those people are never going to get any money from me and I just don't have the money anymore to spend there.
Thank you, sir.
Last thing I'm going to say is I like all of you people. You have a hard job. I know how hard it is.
Getting harder by the second.
And I appreciate what you do for the city. And I really do. I even like Dan Salzman, as ornery as he can be sometimes. We haven't talked much. I like Nick, and I like Chloe's not giving me much time, but I'll work on it. And if I live long enough, she'll like me as a friend too.
Thank you, sir. And I
Last
hope
thing I
you-
want to say, if anyone knows how to get hold of the guy that used to be here, his name is Charlie Hales. I have his Christmas card for him, which I haven't been able to deliver.
All right, thank you, sir.
I actually know
Appreciate
where
it.
Charlie is today. He's in a sailboat off of Haiti.
Oh, dear.
So you're going to have to wait till he comes back, I think.
Does his wife going to keep working?
All
at
right,
Portland
thank
State?
you. Next three, please.
The
Appreciate your
next
testimony.
three
Get
are
well, sir.
Craig Rogers, Shedrick Wilkins, and I think it's Lightning. Did you sign up? That's your name? Okay, then Lightning.
Very good. Good morning.
Oh, me first?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I thought you was first.
You sat down first.
Okay, I'm Shedrick Wilkins. This is my philosophy about this, is we need to have more cameras on side streets. This is an answer to Commissioner Fish's concern about Sandy Boulevard. I'm saying these main arterials are known to be traffic and people are alert when they're around it. I think most of the dangerous driving occurs when people get off Sandy Boulevard, and they also are sneaking up to avoid schools. They want to speed down the road and get to work, right? And that's where the danger is, and you should put a lot of cameras there. I don't necessarily believe in the flash camera photographic system. I think there should be, PBOT should have machine vision that can identify these cars and maybe possibly, and I believe in the people that, in certain circumstances, people might overdrive, but I really worry about the people that think they can do it all the time. And the more cameras you have on these side roads, you can find these people, send them a warning, and then the police can predict when they're going to be there again and give them a ticket. And I think that's the best way to handle this. And I think the news should report on the fact that certain places are getting ticketed drivers. You know, like slow down, you know, you guys. But I really worry about the people that do it all the time, and their only concern is getting to work, you know, and not being late. And you can get up a little earlier, right? Okay, and they keep doing it all the time. And obviously these people are smart enough to know they can drive down Sandy Boulevard and avoid a school. They're that smart. They'll drive on the other road near the school and go 30 miles an hour, right? Also, if you ever have self-driving cars, you better have cameras monitoring them too. Because the argument is, if I was a computer programmer, these things react faster so they can go faster. Or they'll just hit 20, right? And they're not adjusting for traffic. So if you ever release these self-driving cars, you better have a lot of cameras around watching them. And number three is, if there's an earthquake in Portland, you might want to monitor the side roads and see which roads are really have been hit by the earthquake, you know, like the sidewalks up here or something. So the police will know where to adjust traffic, so in an earthquake they won't fall off of a dangerous part of the road that's cracked. And I worry about self-driving cars. They could be monitored with the electronic technology in the first place. And it's the side roads that I really see. I know a friend, he goes fast on a side road. He's smart enough, but he really is he's gonna go fast so he can get to work. And if he just woke up a little earlier, he wouldn't be doing it.
Thank you. Good morning.
My name is Craig Rogers. I live in East Portland, and I'm really happy to be here on this subject that it's come forward. So I wrote this phrase before Leah used it, and it's a good thing that we're both on the same page, because this is a beginning of a long conversation which involves enforcement, a change of attitude towards attention and respect. When I was 2 years old, I ran everywhere I went. My sister's in the house, she calls me, I go running into the house. My mama just waxed the floor and I broke my leg. Now, if I'm at the top of the driveway and the ball rolls down into the street, I'm after it. So this is a good thing. About 4 years ago, during a budgetary hearing, there was a young lady over here that, with regards to the arts, to show where the money goes, she recited a poem that she wrote, and she was in one of those lean-back chairs. And she was incredible with how well she could maneuver it. She came up here and recited a poem, she said, and I don't think there was a dry eye in the place. And me, because the street fee thing was going, I'm thinking, how is she going to get across the streets? And this is a step in the right direction. Where I live at 111th and Yamhill, you can Google it. There's 2 steep streets coming down like that. They call it Thrill Hill. And I've seen cars come down there and try and do the 4-wheel drift and end up in the yard. So about 2 years ago, I'm outside of Chambers and I'm talking with Krebs. And I'm telling him this idea of mine, where it's a high visibility, where Burnside and Sandy come together over on the east side. I said, there ought to be a big billboard up there. It has a quote by Mahatma Gandhi, and it's simply this: there's more to life than increasing its speed. And he said, do it. He said, do it. That's what we're going to have to do, is work on changing the attitude of the citizens behind the wheel. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Lightning. I represent Lightning Super Watchdog X. Some of the studies that were given on the ability to hit your brakes at a certain amount of feet, say 25 miles per hour, 59 feet, 20 to 42 feet. So I tried to do an estimate of 15 miles per hour to maybe 25 feet, 10 to maybe 20 feet. Now, those are interesting calculations when you're analyzing the data. Is that, I guess my response to that type of data is, are these people able to hit their brakes in a reasonable manner at any speed? And why I'm saying that is the issues that we're dealing with throughout the city on impaired drivers, number one, on what they might be impaired with. A lot of the things we're seeing right now being passed, even at City Council, could have an effect on their ability to hit those brakes at any time in a reasonable manner. So we're talking the speed right now, which in a residential setting, I absolutely agree on that issue, especially for the children, and again, was brought up the seniors. But again, I'm looking at more of the aspect of making sure people have that ability to hit those brakes in a timely manner, period. They're not impaired in any way. And I think you understand what I'm talking about, and I don't have to go into certain areas on that, but I'm very focused on that. Issue number 2 is that I understand this was passed, HB 2682 in 2017. Now, in the media, they said they already had the signs made. Now, if I were to sit here and say to you, don't pass this ordinance today, because I think Commissioner Udaley brought up a really good point on the DMV aspect of it. I'd like to see that put in writing immediately before this was even passed, because I think that's very important to people reading that information and then going out and possibly breaking the law, but it says it right in the pamphlet. I'm following what's in the DMV pamphlet. That has to be changed immediately, in my opinion, before the sign goes up. So I'm asking you not to do an emergency vote on this today, and possibly follow a little bit farther on what Commissioner Udaley said and have contact with the DMV, and also a little bit of input from the city attorneys on this issue. And another thing I might have a little problem with, it's stated in the publication today that Portland Bureau of Transportation, PBOT, already has approximately 2,000 signs with the lower speed limit ready to be installed. Well, here's the problem I have with this. I'm the public maybe saying don't approve this. And I hope you're not already making these signs with the intent that you've all approved this yet. Because I have a problem with that, and that's called protocol. That's called listening to the public, respecting what the public has to say before you make your final vote. So again, as stated by publication, if they've already made these signs before you've made a vote, I'm not very happy about this as a watchdog, and I'm watching you very close on what you're doing. Thank you for allowing my time.
Thank you for your testimony. Next 3, please.
Are Joe Walsh, Dan Brame, and Jarek Kransky.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning. We go in the order we were called, or?
I'm first. You're first. You might as well go ahead. Thank you.
My name is Dan Brame. I live in Northeast Portland. I'm a father, a grandfather. My kids, grandkids live in Northeast Portland. I'm also a retired transportation engineer with 45 years of experience. And I'd like to briefly cover some of my experience to explain to you where I'm coming from. My first job out of college, I have a bachelor's degree, I have a master's degree in transportation, and I'll come back to that in a minute. My first job was in Georgia DOT as a district traffic and safety engineer. I focused on engineering solutions geared toward accident prevention. I'm sure you're familiar with the 3 E's: enforcement, engineering, education. My focus has been engineering for accidents for my total career. First half of my career was in the public sector, from DOT to teaching college for a few years, and my last public service I focused at the City of Orlando as the Director of Transportation. Second half of my career has been in the private sector as a consultant. Now, I'm here not to dispute the physics. We all know the physics: speed kills, lower speed, reaction times. That's a given. I'm here to talk about the big if we can reduce speeds. My experience, my research on a personal level, that master's degree I mentioned, I did research on the impact of changing speed limit signs on speed. I set out and collected the speed data in a very scientific, rigorous manner, got an A in the course, looking at 35, 30, and 25 mile per hour speed limit signs. Only changing the speed limit sign from 25 to 20 will have no impact on speed. Don't trust my research. Yes, it's 45 years old. Go online, do your own research. If my grandmother used to say, if wishes were horses, we'd all take a ride. If it would lower speed, I'd be all for it. The real issue is the congestion on our arterials, the cut-through traffic, and the conditions along the roadway. When we have a specific problem anywhere on our streets, including residential streets, speed limits and a lot of other tools, the dynamic signs should be applied to that problem. So you might say, well, Dan, what's the problem? If it doesn't work, at least we've tried. The problem is it'll breed disrespect for speed limit signs elsewhere. Speed limit signs are an important tool to your traffic safety staff where needed to warn of that curve. The dynamic speed sign that can be very effective in helping do this. Those signs have effectiveness, but the speed limit change from 25 to 20, especially on the blanket level that's proposed, is going to breed disrespect for speed limit signs elsewhere. And I urge you not to do that. It'll also give a false sense of security. So maybe you ought to instead consider a pilot program and see for yourself if changing a speed limit sign gives us the results. I'm all for the result.
Thank you.
This is the wrong way to do it.
Thank you, sir. Good morning.
Good morning. For the record, my name is Joe Walsh. I represent Individuals for Justice. We fully support the idea of lowering the speed limits in order to save lives. I mean, who would be against that? The problem with this is it's just a reasonable approach. You're going from 25 down to 20. 17 seems to be the maximum. That if you go to 17, you show some results. Not at 20, but at 17. So our question is this. You have two items on the agenda. One is to lower the speed down to 20, which we support. And another one is to get overtime for the traffic cops to write the tickets. Number 53 asked for overtime to write tickets. We thought that was comical, that you would do that.
Mr. Walsh, Mr. Walsh, I'd like to.
Don't interrupt me, please.
I'd like to. Excuse me. I would like to. Excuse me, sir. You are out of order. You are out of order. Take a seat. Take a seat. Take a seat.
No.
Take a seat.
No.
I'm sorry, this is an interruption that is in violation of council rules. If you do not take a seat, you'll be asked to leave.
Will not let me finish. And you lie all the time. Let me finish my statement.
We will take a 5-minute recess. I just want to clarify as to why Mr. Walsh was removed. As you will recall, at the beginning council, I read what the council rules were, and I was very clear on what those rules were. One of those rules includes if you are going to provide testimony on the item that is actually at hand. And Mr. Walsh was trying to comment on the next ordinance. We have not presented the ordinance. Staff has not had an opportunity to explain what the ordinance was. And in fairness to staff, they should have the opportunity to present the ordinance, then have public testimony on that ordinance. Mr. Walsh was unwilling to do that. I prefer him to stay here in chamber. I do not like kicking Mr. Walsh out. But in this case, it was obvious he was not in agreement with me, but as the presiding officer, the one who's responsible for enforcing the council rules, I felt it necessary to do that. So I apologize to everyone for that disruption. You've been very patient. It's good to see you again. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Mayor Wheeler, Commissioners. My name is Garrick Kransky, and I'm here representing the Street Trust. I really appreciate the opportunity to have a conversation with you about this ordinance, and there's been a really robust discussion here at Council today about the merits of reducing speeds to save lives on our streets. So I won't belabor all of the fantastic points that have been covered. I'll basically say thank you for the work that you've done to get us to this point, and please do more. At the Street Trust, we are committed to the principle of Vision Zero, which is reducing our serious injuries and fatalities on our streets to zero. We've been working with community groups on a pilot program as far back as 2011, so we've been thrilled to see the evolution that the city has taken in its approach towards making our streets safe. As representatives of people who are walking and riding bikes and using transit to get around, these are essential sort of life changes that can make our community much more approachable and accessible for people as they get around to meet their daily needs. So it's fantastic. And we know this is just a first step. While it will increase safety on over 70% of our streets, we have more work to do on those high crash corridors. And so we definitely want to represent the 673 people that we were able to engage with in just the last 2 weeks when we saw that this ordinance was coming up at council. A bunch of folks immediately signed on to a petition of support that I shared with all of you, and I wanted to take a moment in council chambers here today to sort of honor those 673 people who are supporting the ordinance and asking for more.
Thank you, Mr. Kransky.
And that's all I have. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Thank you. Is that the end of public testimony, Carla?
I show one more. Rob Noss.
Oh, that's Representative Noss. He already spoke.
Thank you.
Very
Okay.
good. Very good. Folks, would you like staff to come back up to answer any further questions? No. Very good. Please call the roll.
Fritz.
Well, thanks very much to Representative Noss and Speaker Kotek for their leadership in getting the permission to do this. That was huge. Thank you, Commissioner Saltzman, for your lobbying on that and also your bringing this ordinance forward. Thank you, Director Treese and Dana Dickman, for your excellent work on this. I have now lost 3 family members to traffic crashes involving speed. And for people who say that this won't work, it might. And I would ask everyone who drives to think of, do you want to be the driver that causes a traffic fatality? And if staying at a reasonable speed will decrease the likelihood that you will cause that crash, I would suggest that that is in your best interest to do that as well as in everybody else's on the streets. Commander Krebs, you gave us the only smile of this hearing in that you mentioned peer pressure, in that most drivers on local streets are your neighbours. I would suggest if you need any encouragement to drive safely on local streets, get yourself an Inferno red car, put flames on the side and about 30 bumper stickers on the back. There is no doubt to my neighbours when I am driving down the street, and I am very well aware of that. I take transit to work every day, so I won't be driving down my street in the near future. And when I do, I will immediately start driving 20. Mary Sipe, thank you for your comment that we already have reader boards. They're called speedometers. I think it's very important to look. There's a reason for speed limits. and especially on local and arterial and collector streets, it's really important to monitor your own speed and do what you're supposed to do. I believe that most Portlanders do the right thing if they know what they're supposed to do, and it's definitely the right thing to start driving 20 miles an hour on local streets. Thank you for your work. Aye.
Fish.
I want to second everything that Commissioner Fritz just said. Dan, thank you for bringing this forward and for the work, the diligent work you did to bring it forward. Leah Treat, thank you for the presentation and the staff work. My friend Randall Edwards called me the other day, and his father died. His father died at age, I think, 84. And a number of us have had the chance to meet Randall's dad over the years. And I said, well, what a blessing that he lived long enough to see you and Julia get married. He got to know his grandchildren. He lived a full life. What we're talking about in preventing unnecessary deaths on our streets and our arterials is preventing families from being torn apart by the tragedy of a completely preventable death. Commissioner Fritz has experienced unspeakable tragedy. At age 11, my family buried my mother. My mother never got to see her son get married, have children, seek public office, and indeed, my children were robbed of the chance to have a loving grandmother in their life. We know that there's a problem, and we know there's lots of ways of going to fix the problem. The question is, do we have the will to implement them? And we can argue about, whether it's 20 or 25 or, what level of enforcement, but my view on Vision Zero is, let's take all the best ideas and implement them. Because if we save a life, if we prevent someone from going through the horror of burying a loved one, we've done something important. And as to the notion that we can't change behavior, I do think we can change behavior. I think we do it through peer pressure and community pressure and setting an example. How about setting an example? Like, put your goddamn phone down when you drive. For some reason, my phone now says it can't be used while I'm driving. And I don't know how I think my daughter put some app on it. But that's the best technological innovation I've ever seen. My phone is like offline when I'm driving. I can't use it. So I hope everyone considers putting...
Actually, a mega corporation put that on your phone, not your daughter.
Okay, well, anyway, I think it was a good idea. And so thank you for your good work, and I will continue during Dan's tenure at PBOT, and whoever succeeds Dan, I will continue to join with my colleagues in supporting Vision Zero. Bye.
Saltzman.
Well, I want to once again thank Representative Rob Noss for his leadership, and thank the Oregon legislature and the governor for making this the law of Portland. This does only apply to Portland. And I do think that I also want to thank the Bureau of Transportation and Portland Police Traffic Division for all the hard work you're doing to make Vision Zero a reality. It's a real challenge to eliminate all fatalities by 2025, as we've seen with the increase in fatalities just from last year to this year. And with more people living closer together and people disobeying speed limits and other traffic laws, it is a more hazardous environment, particularly for pedestrians and bicyclists these days. So I think this will be in effect. I think, as Commissioner Fish said, I think most people do want to respect the law, obey the law. And I do think that this will have, as we heard from Captain Krebs, this can, and Director Treat, this can really reduce the injuries or fatality of somebody who is hit at a given speed, 25 versus 20. So it's definitely a move worth making. And I was intrigued by Commissioner Udaley's reference to the Oregon Driver's Manual. And I'll confess, it's been a long time since I've actually read the Oregon Driver's Manual. But I do recall somewhere in there, I think it says, obey posted speed limits first and foremost, and then 25 is the rule of the road. So I do think we need to try to fix that issue. But I do think the basic admonition there is obey posted speed limits. Pleased to support this? Aye.
Udaley.
I'm also pleased to support this item, and you're in for a treat, Commissioner Saltzman, because I looked up the Oregon Driver's Manual, and what it says is the following speeds are set in law for the specified areas, whether posted or not. They apply unless a different speed is posted. So obviously that affords us the ability to change speeds. I am concerned just with the lack of posting in a lot of neighborhoods, and certainly wouldn't want to see people unfairly ticketed for driving the previous limit. So I'm really interested in that communications campaign and happy to assist however we can, and I vote aye.
Wheeler.
Well, first of all, let me say, Commissioner Saltzman, I think this is extremely important work, and I very much appreciate you and your team's efforts on this. I think it's great, and I support the comments that my colleagues have made with regard to the governor and the legislature for allowing us to open up this opportunity. A couple of issues from my perspective. First of all, as police commissioner, I get more information on the number of accidents that happen in this community that go beyond the deaths that are well publicized. People are hit in crosswalks and getting across streets and other activities on the streets on a very regular basis in this community. And government obviously has tools at its disposal. We've talked about engineering, we've talked about education, we've talked about enforcement. I believe this is an important step towards reducing the kinds of interactions that we're having on our street that are leading to some of the negative news stories about how safe our community actually is. And I know that there will be those who say this is the government intervening and trying to change our behavior. I want to be clear, that is exactly right. But the truth is, government shouldn't have to come in to change behavior. We shouldn't have to be taking this action. The reason we're doing it is because people aren't using the two most valuable tools they have to reduce accidents and injuries on our street, and that is a reasonable schedule and the clock that you need to make sure that you are running on time. If you leave home late for something that you have scheduled to, you are going to drive faster than you need to. And so, really, I hope the communications program is have a reasonable schedule, know how long it takes you to get from point A to point B, and look at the clock and leave on time. Don't leave late. Because so many of these accidents, people say after the fact, oh my gosh, I didn't mean to run this person over, I was running late. And that is epidemic in our society. We're all overscheduled, we're all super busy, we're always running late. And the busier and later you are, the more you're not thinking about what you should be thinking about, which is driving the car and doing so in a safe manner. So this is one tool that we are using, but it's not the most important tool. The most important tool is ultimately the decisions we make as drivers before and while we get behind the wheel of an automobile. So again, Dan, super work. Very impressive work. Thank you. I vote aye. The ordinance is adopted. Next item, item number 49.
Create a local improvement district to construct street, sidewalk, stormwater, and sanitary sewer improvements in the Southeast 80th Avenue and Mill Street Local Improvement District.
Commissioner Saltzman.
Thank you, Mayor. It's a pleasure to bring forward the ordinance to create the local improvement district at Southeast 80th and Mill Street. As a reminder, just over a month ago, we passed the resolution stating our intent to form this local improvement district, making it clear that we felt property owners would support it, including Portland Public Schools, as this improves streets around Bridger Elementary. In the subsequent months, LID Administrator Andrew Abbey has been doing what Andrew does best, garnering that support from adjacent property owners. We have 22 letters in support, to be exact. In the course of that effort, some unique wrinkles have been encountered, and Andrew will walk us through those with an amendment. And it's also important to note that this will be the fourth currently formed LID that integrates street, stormwater, pedestrian, and sanitary sewer infrastructure in one project, thus stretching property owners' LID dollars and BES ratepayer dollars to their full potential.
That's great.
Then I'll turn it over to Andrew.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Saltzman. Andrew Abbey, Local Improvement District Administrator. So I passed out three things for you. One is a hard copy of the presentation that I'm going to give. Another was a letter of support from TriMet. This project is very close to the number 72 bus line, which is the second most heavily used bus line in the system. And then I also passed out an amendment, which I'll walk you through that momentarily. So, Commissioner Saltzman, I'm sorry you weren't able to join us last month when you were ill, but I'm very pleased to report that this has been a good partnership, not only with the property owners, but also with ODOT. They replaced the traffic signal at 82nd and Mill and installed new curb ramps, so that is an expense that we do not need to bear with the LID. So, just a quick recap of what we're doing on Mill Street and what the CIP coordination is. So the Bureau of Environmental Services is replacing an undersized sanitary sewer line. Rather than putting a beautiful trench back down the middle of the street that would fall apart relatively quickly, we're instead going to use those BES funds to buy down the cost of the LID for the property owners and to fully reconstruct the street with curbs, drainage, and sidewalks. At the December council hearing, I showed you a wonderful video produced by Rachel Kimbrough. She is here today, and I believe will be offering testimony. I hadn't planned to rerun that video out of respect for your time, but I think the other council members recall that very compelling video. So these are some pictures that I took on Southeast 80th Avenue. These particular pictures are along Slavic Emmanuel Church. They did submit a remonstrance, which was subsequently withdrawn, and I can walk you through those amendments. I just want to repeat what a nearby middle school principal said. He said, "To watch my students come to school with wet shoes, knowing that those are their only shoes because they have a journey to school that involves walking through water is heartbreaking to me. I think it's an assault on their basic dignity to have to live like that because there aren't amenities that most communities take for granted." So this is a map of the 80th and Mill LID. You can see that we completely closed the gap of unpaved streets, no drainage, and no sidewalks all the way down to north of Grant Street. And then finally, I just wanted to walk you through the amendment that I passed out. So I really appreciate the many discussions this month and last month that I've had with Slavic Church Emmanuel. They are a very rich congregation, rich in terms of the cultural diversity that they bring to the city. They've certainly extended me a warm welcome in working with me on this LID, and I appreciate that very much. They have 1,300 parishioners, many of whom are talented in many different fields, including several who have done street construction for various municipalities. So they just simply wanted the option to take the PBOT design that we will prepare and then build their own frontage using their own skills to do that. And so I verified this with the city attorney. We're fine with this in concept. In effect, what happens is that the LID will act as a backstop in that if they don't construct their frontage, and the LID will step in and build their frontage, but otherwise we're affording them the opportunity to build their frontage under a permit. We built in some SUC fund toward the design of this project, and we will credit those funds towards the design of the frontage improvements along Slavic Church Emmanuel. And last but certainly not least, I wanted to note that last month, among the 22 letters of support, was a letter from the owner of 1902 Southeast 80th Avenue. This gentleman's family bought the house in, I believe, 1953 or 1954. Mayor Wheeler, you are the 11th mayor who has served during his ownership of the home. He's wanted sidewalks and drainage during all of that time, and no prizes as to guessing who his favorite mayor will be if this ordinance is approved today.
Well, thank you, Andrew, for making me look good.
Delivered.
So that is the extent of my presentation today, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. If you would like to take a vote on the amendment, then we could pass this to a second reading next week.
I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Commissioner Fish moves, Commissioner Saltzman seconds. Is there any further discussion or questions on the amendment? Call the roll.
Fritz?
Aye.
Fish?
Aye.
Saltzman?
Aye.
Udaley?
Aye.
Wheeler?
Aye. The amendment is adopted. Any further questions for Andrew? Any public testimony on this item?
Yes, we have two people signed up,
Very good.
Rachel Kimbrough and Amy Wren.
Good morning. Welcome. 3 minutes. Name for the record.
Okay. Hi, good morning. My name's Rachel Kimbrough, and I'm a mother and parent of 2 girls who attend Bridger Elementary. And I can't tell you how overjoyed I am to hear that these improvements are going to be made in our immediate neighborhood. This morning, my daughters walked to school in the middle of the street. There's no sidewalks. I have friends who every morning and every afternoon have had to, for years, walk with small children, with strollers, through the section on 80th, navigating between school buses and cars, and it's difficult. It's very difficult for parents. I know many times I've chosen to drive a couple blocks to see friends in the immediate area rather than walk a couple blocks because of the lack of infrastructure. And just to had the chance, you saw my video that I created last month. I feel just so proud to realize that these improvements are going to be made. It's going to be a huge change and a huge asset for our community. So thank you, and thank you to Andrew for putting it all together.
Thanks for coming in. Appreciate it.
And my name is Amy Wren, and I live near the street and use it every day because it is part of the Greenway. And I, too, just am overwhelmed with thankfulness that this is going to happen. I read through all the letters of support. It is impressive to me that the people who live on the street are so excited to see this happen and are willing to put in their funds to help make it happen. That's a huge deal. And it really does show how difficult the street is and why it needs these improvements. I also want to thank Andrew. He's been great through this whole process, helping all these people come together and make these connections and figure out how to communicate with the city and with you how important this is. And personally, I came to this project because of the transportation and traffic class that is put on by PSU and is sponsored by the city and is run by PBOT basically. And as you're leaving, I would like to say, I really do hope that the city continues to support those programs. It's a class that really does teach members of the community how to interact with the city and how what the limitations really are of the city and how we can best spend our money to get the best impact. I live in an area with lots of streets that aren't paved, and that's fine. I don't think it's important personally that every street gets paved. I think we should look at where the issues are. This is a school. This is an area that really needs the improvement. And I understand now going through this class how it all comes together, and I just really hope that the city continues to support those classes and teach members of the community of how to interact with the city to make it better. So thank you for your time. Yeah.
Amy, you're a great testament to why we should keep that class going, because you really are, in many respects, both of you, were the sparks, the catalyst that really got this project to where it is today. So thank you for doing that on behalf of all your neighbors, I'm sure.
Yeah. Commissioner Fritz?
Commissioner Saltzman, Mr. Abbey, I really appreciate the people who came in today to testify. Is there any reason that we can't add an emergency clause to this ordinance? Because it would be nice to vote on it while you're actually here so that you can really relish your accomplishment. That's not the reason if I put an emergency clause on it.
Commissioner Fritz, Andrew Abbey, LID Administrator. I neglected to mention that next week we will have, we meant to have it on the agenda for today. We didn't quite get it filed in time, but next week we're going to have a property rights ordinance. We have one property on 80th that sticks out into the right-of-way, which in theory, the property owner could throw up a Jersey barrier tomorrow and prevent people from actually driving or walking to Bridger. So we were kind of wanting to orchestrate this so that council would approve the LID and the property rights ordinance kind of on the same day. So if it's okay, maybe we are adding an emergency clause to that one. So if it's okay, we'd like to have them both approved next week. And I might also add that that property owner is in full support of working with us to dedicate that right of way. So.
Okay. Well, hopefully you can catch us on Channel 30. So thank you very much for coming in.
Yeah, thank you.
And I also just wanted to add, you know, we had that contingent remonstrance, which is now withdrawn by virtue of council approving the amendment. So I'm extremely pleased. I wasn't sure that it was going to land this way, but I'm extremely pleased. We have 0 remonstrances for this LID right now.
I saw that.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Good. Very good. Any further comments or discussion on this? I just want to thank Commissioner Saltzman again, and Andrew, thank you again for your yeoman's efforts on this. This is a first reading of a non-emergency ordinance. It moves to second reading. Item number 51, please.
Authorize Portland Parks and Recreation to execute parks allocation certification agreements and accept annual grant awards from the Oregon State Marine Board for maintenance of boating facilities.
That's me.
Commissioner Fritz.
The City of Portland received a grant from the Oregon State Marine Board Maintenance Assistance Program. The grant is a continuing grant that the city must bill for each year. An ordinance is required for the acceptance of any grant award to the city. Portland Parks and Recreation is now bringing this ordinance before council, and the amount of the grant for fiscal year 2017 to 18 is $19,950.
Public testimony. And this is an item that was pulled. Good morning.
Good morning. Yes, my name is Lightning. I represent Lightning Super Watchdog X. One of the reasons why I pulled this is that my understanding this grant actually pertains to 4 different properties that the City of Portland owns. Cathedral Park, Selwood Riverfront Park, and also we'd be looking at Swan Island Ramp and also Willamette Park. Now, one of the reasons why I'm bringing up those points is that I really think that the grant, the number amount, I know there's possibly a match to this grant too of $13,000 if I'm correct. And I don't know if you're calculating that $13,000 above the $19,000, is that correct? Okay, so that would be above the actual grant, and then the match would take place. So what I guess what I was trying to do is do a calculation between the 4 parks themselves into the total amount. And I guess where my concern is, and I'll be candid, is I think the grant is very much on the low side for the type of maintenance that it takes to operate these type of properties. And I was really kind of surprised on the low number itself, and that's why I pulled this, is that I really think that the Oregon Marine Board should offer more money, or did the City of Portland only ask a certain percentage? Now, I noticed that you're calculating kind of using a percentage on the maintenance itself, because you had on the different values for like the restrooms and different maintenance on this, hard surface ramps, the boarding docks, different things you put into your calculations. But to me, any type of facility like that on the water is, and I have a clear understanding what it takes because I actually used to own a marina on the water. And the reality is that it takes a lot of money, and a lot of people don't understand that, to maintain these facilities properly. So again, I think from the Oregon Marine Board, where the number is very low. And so that really surprised me, being from the side of operating a marina and understanding all the costs that go into it. Even on the, like you say, on the surface of the walkways, if it's wood or if they have concrete or if they have different type of materials that they put into place. The maintenance on this overall property is normally pretty high. And because you're dealing with a lot of environmental aspects, a lot of environmental issues, a lot of issues on making sure lines going up the toilets are connected properly, oil's not going into the water, all these different variables take to place. So why was the number so low, if I might ask Commissioner Fritz to maybe explain that? Thank you very much.
absolutely confident my staff always ask for as much as we can possibly get.
I have an embellishment of that as well. There is, and I believe this is available on the website related to this item, there's the site inventory exhibit, and that is basically the formula. It's a state formula. And I'm sure we're all in agreement that we'd like to have more.
So I do encourage you to go talk to the Marine Board. They, I believe, have public testimony.
Yeah, we don't disagree with you on that. Very good. This is a first reading of a non-emergency ordinance. It moves to second reading. Next item, 52.
52, authorize application to the Department of Homeland Security through its Federal Emergency Management Agency for a grant in the amount of $2,262,091 for self-contained breathing apparatus.
Commissioner Saltzman.
This was an item that was pulled.
Correct.
Who pulled it?
Lightning.
Okay. Well, we have Chief Boone and Jay Guo here from Portland Fire and Rescue to speak to this grant.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Jay Guo. I'm Business Operation Manager for Portland Fire and Rescue.
And my name is Sarah Boone, Deputy Chief Logistics, Portland Fire and Rescue.
Thank you.
So we are here to kind of ask Council's approval for authorization to apply for a grant from Department of Homeland Security in the amount of $2,262,000. This is we have SCBA and their useful life is 15 years, and most of our SCBA is kind of to the end of useful life.
Could you please explain for people who do not know what an SCBA is? Okay. What is it and why is it important?
Okay. So the SCBA is self-contained breathing apparatus and is the one thing, it's compressed breathable air that allows firefighters to be interior structural firefighters. Basically, it's required by OSHA as well as OSHA and NFPA for any city that has a fire department with interior structural firefighters to have a strong respiratory protection program.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Chief.
So this is a kind of a good opportunity to apply for a grant to help us pay for the replacement. So,
and I'll just add, Portland Fire has done a great job when it comes to budgeting and how we replace components within the whole self-contained breathing apparatus, whether it's our cylinders, whether it's applying for a grant for our face pieces. But the one thing that we were caught off guard, which is an inherent flaw to the brand and model that we have, we've been identifying key issues that are putting our members in harm's way. And this is something we have tracked over the last 2 years, and the issues have been so great that we need to replace all our SCBAs at once.
And this grant helps you do that?
Yes.
And then it's my understanding that our side of the deal here is we're obligated to maintain the equipment up to standard. Is that correct?
Yes.
Very good. That certainly makes sense. Very good. Thank you. We have public testimony on this item. I'm not sure who pulled it. Was this Lightning? Come on up, sir. Good morning.
Good morning. Yes, my name is Lightning. I represent Lightning Super Watchdog X. Again, one of the reasons why I did pull this grant is whenever I see a dollar amount of $2,262,000, I'd like to see that on the regular agenda, only because when I'm looking at the dollar amount, and that just from my position. Now, issue number 2 is that, again, it wasn't really stated on this ordinance on how many self-contained breathing apparatus pieces of equipment we were actually buying. It gives a number here of the $2,262,000, but I'd like to know how many we're replacing. Issue number 3 is that on the equipment that we currently have, what are we going to do with that? And why that is a concern to me now is that we have in the past donated or given certain types of equipment to Mexico, for instance, on some equipment. And here's my position on why, with this ordinance, I think this all covers that, is that I have, at this point, kind of a concern on the wildfires that we're experiencing in different areas. And I think we need to utilize that equipment instead of maybe donating to someone else, to have that equipment go to certain locations within our state. And it's very important to me that if we have that equipment, such as on properties we've seen that were saved by the firefighters coming in and utilizing their equipment on certain properties and certain locations, if we have this type of equipment that we could actually have some equipment right next to that location and left there and given to them, why don't we do that now? We should not be donating our equipment out of state. We need to understand we need it here now. And that's my point on pulling this item, is that where are these, this other equipment, where's it gonna go? Can we utilize it in other areas within our state? And let's just not donate it to Mexico. I'm sorry to say, I do not want to be giving any more equipment to Mexico when we need it here now. And so again, everything else looks good on here. I do see you do have a match on this too of a $226,000. And again, I'm in full support of this grant, you getting the equipment. Again, it's just kind of past the point of where everything is going to end up at the end of the day. So again, keep the equipment in Oregon, anything you can, and that's my position. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Any further testimony? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Fritz?
I would hope if it doesn't work that we're not going to donate it to anybody. Aye.
Fish?
Aye.
Saltzman?
Aye.
Udaly?
Aye.
Wheeler?
I want to thank the Assistant Chief and staff for coming up and explaining that. That was very helpful. I vote aye. The ordinance is adopted. Next item, 53.
Apply for and accept a grant in the amount of $15,000 and appropriate $7,500 for fiscal year 2017-18 from the Oregon Department of Transportation Traffic Safety Division fiscal year 2018 Speed Enforcement Grant Program for sworn personnel overtime reimbursement.
Good morning, Sergeant Engstrom.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. I'm Sergeant Ty Engstrom, Portland Police Bureau's Traffic Division. And I wanted to just come to give you a brief overview of what this grant is and answer any questions you may have. I've been back in the traffic division for the last couple years and had the opportunity to manage this grant. It's a pretty small grant compared to some of the other ones that the Bureau and other agencies get. But this one in particular helps us out because, as we've already talked about in the session today, speed is a factor around our city. The city has adopted the Vision Zero program to try and reduce the number of serious injury and fatal crashes down to zero by in the near future. And this is a tool to help us to achieve some of those goals. Now, it's no secret that the Police Bureau staffing levels have had some challenges recently, and the Traffic Division is a part of that as well. Earlier, Captain Krebs also mentioned that city citizens can go to the website, the city's website, and make a complaint about a traffic concern they have in their area. We call these trackets. And the ones that have a traffic enforcement component to them, I go through and I look at all those, and I kind of have to triage them based on our staffing levels and our needs and what we can go out and help and enforce. Not all of them, unfortunately, get attention by an officer, but I go through them and I look at them, and the ones that seem like they're concerning or are part of our high crash network of streets, I try and get officers to go out there and to work on those streets. So that brings me to this grant, is we don't always have the staffing levels we need, and so this allows for officers to come in at their own discretion when they decide they have some time on a day off. They can coordinate with me, and I can talk to them about what hours they can work and what area of town that they can work to add some additional enforcement and education in the area of speed. This also includes distracted driving, which is a secondary component to this grant. They would like us to look for those electronic device uses as well. Now, part of Vision Zero and part of, as testified by a couple people today, is we work on education, enforcement, and engineering. I do not have an engineering background, but I can certainly help out with the education and enforcement. And I try when I can and when I remember to make sure that the people I talk to have a good understanding of why it is I'm talking to them that day and why what they're doing is a dangerous behavior. And we talked about fatalities in the city of Portland, that we had 45 this last year, which was a high number. And it's been going up. I have the numbers for the last 5 years or so, and it's, gone up a little bit each year. Injury crashes. This last year I only have through December 15th, but they seem to be down a little bit from the prior 2 years, but up from the 2 years before that. Non-injury crashes, are down a little bit, but those ones are a little hard to read because as at the police bureau, we don't investigate every crash that happens out there. Someone might get in a rear end crash, there's no injury, police don't get called, and so, or maybe we come and just help facilitate an exchange. So this grant is geared towards helping us to reduce the speeds and hopefully helping us to reduce the number of crashes on the streets. And it's not a mandatory thing for the officers. They have to come in and work this. They're not forced to do it. It's by volunteer. Whoever decides they have some extra time on their weekend, they would like to come in and add some patrol to those areas, they're welcome to contact me and do that from within the traffic division. And again, this is overtime reimbursement grant from ODOT. So they're the ones paying the reimbursement money for this overtime that's being worked. There is a match component to it, which I believe is 25%. So for this grant, it's $15,000 with a match time of, I believe it was $37.50.
$37.50 and 7 cents.
And 7 cents, that's right. $37.50 and 7 cents, which I believe is about 25%. So that component is paid for by the Bureau, and that takes me back to those trackets. I might find a tracket that happens to be on a high crash corridor or an area of concern, and I can send one of my officers out there to work that area, or maybe they decide on their own, regardless of the tracket, to go work that area. Now all they have to do is fill out a little sheet with their information of what they did, when they worked it, what their results were, and they give that to me, and that's how I tabulate that match time. So it's not like we're going out of our way to take resources from something that we should be doing over here and putting it towards something different. We're using this to help track on straight time efforts that they're already doing or we should be doing in working in high crash corridors and helping to reduce these serious injury and fatal crashes. So as far as those high crash corridors, the city, PBOT, as well as ODOT are pretty close together on what they consider the high crash corridors. So this grant is coming from ODOT, so they've got their list of the areas that they feel are high crash corridors. But, you know, for example, Highway 213, which is ODOT, is also 82nd Avenue, which is a concern to us. So they overlap a lot. But this grant also allows for us to, it says not limited to the streets that they list. So we can go work some other areas. If we happen to have a couple of really bad crashes on a street that we hadn't really taken note on before, I can certainly take officers and we can put some enforcement and education in that area as well. One last thing just to clarify, earlier I came up and talked about speed fines and the 4 different levels, A through D violations. I think I might have misspoke. Lowest level of a D is 120, and it goes up and works its way up to a Class A violation, which is $445. Oh, and one last thing that I just thought about. When officers are out there doing these directed patrols on this grant or doing the match time, I don't dictate to them that you must write a ticket to everybody, or you must give a warning to everybody, or you must give people a chance to go to a class every single time. Officers have some discretion when it comes to that, and they take these stops as a case-by-case situation, and they talk to the person and they do what they feel is appropriate. Some officers might be more inclined to give citations, some more inclined to give warnings. But what we want them to do is to be out there actively working, actively patrolling, looking for those speeding and other dangerous behaviors, but focusing on speeding especially, and the electronic device as a secondary one. But they can absolutely stop somebody for whatever they deem as a violation or something that's a dangerous behavior, along with those focuses.
Commissioner Fritz?
Well, which jurisdiction gets the money from traffic fines?
Clarify, what do you mean by which jurisdiction? I'm only responsible for Portland.
Does,
so.
does Portland police get the money from traffic fines, or does the...
Oh, traffic fines.
Yes.
I'm sorry. You know, I recently got an email about that, about the breakdown of it, and I don't have all the figures in front of me, but, and I don't know the exact percentage. I don't have that, but I know that it's the state gets a percentage and the city gets a small percentage. I can't remember. Yeah. I apologize. I wish I had that figure for you.
I think the state gets the majority of it.
That was what I was remembering.
That sounds familiar.
Yeah, so when people are saying we're just doing this to enrich the city's coffers, no, we're not.
Yeah, it's not all coming to us. That's definitely for sure.
Very good. Commissioner Saltzman.
Distracted driving or using an electronic device no longer has to be a secondary.
I'm sorry, not a secondary offense, but as a secondary goal to the grant. So the ODOT is asking us specifically, please go out and look for speeders. But you can also go look for these cell phone or electronic device citations as well. So forgive me if I was unclear about that. Yeah, it's not a secondary offense. If we see someone doing something as little as holding that device, it doesn't even have to be a cell phone, it can be any electronic device in their hand, it's grounds that they could be stopped and contacted by that, for that.
Great.
Yeah, thank you for the clarification.
Any further questions? Thanks, Ty.
Thank you.
Is there public testimony on this item?
We have one person signed up,
Very
Terry
good.
Parker.
Come on up, sir. Good morning.
Good morning again. I hadn't planned on this, but after listening to one of Portland's finest, I'm not sure if what's appropriate what I want to say, but I think I would like to see some of the money used for policing bicycling. As an example, I mentioned the interstate hill. Bicyclists pedal as fast as they can down that hill so they can coast as far as they can to get to the Broadway Bridge. Another area that I'm not sure would qualify, but 41st and Broadway, right there where the Hollywood Library is, there's 2 crosswalks, there's bicycle lanes, and on Tillamook. And I would say that maybe 1 in 10, if that many bicyclists stop at those stop signs. I've seen them weave around pedestrians and kids and everything else in the crosswalks. They waved around me in the crosswalk. So we need enforcement of bicycles, again, to change an attitude here. And that's really all I needed to say. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate your testimony. Sergeant T.
Thank you. Just one moment to address his concerns, and I'd be happy to speak with him afterward, since I am the one who takes on these traffic enforcement-related complaints. As far as this grant is concerned, it's speeding. So if my officers are in an area that's deemed appropriate for us to be enforcing as part of this grant, and they happen to see a bicyclist or somebody on a scooter or whatever going above the speed limit or doing something in dangerous fashion like that, they can absolutely contact that person. Now, we are limited on the locations. We got to make sure we're going to the right locations that fall within the parameters of the grant. And Broadway, I have to double check if Broadway is part of the high crash network, but even if it is not, that's something, if there's a serious concern there and a safety issue, that's something that we can take care of in our, I put on regular Vision Zero missions where I take some officers and we go work an area together, and this might be a potential area that we can look at. So I'd be happy to talk to him more about that. So, but any further questions?
Thank you, Sergeant Engstrom.
Thank you for your work.
It's good seeing you again.
Thank you.
Very good. Please call the roll.
Fritz?
Thank you. That was a very comprehensive presentation, and I appreciate your responsiveness and your care for the people of Portland. Aye.
Fish?
Aye.
Saltzman?
We also appreciate your Vision Zero missions. Aye.
Udaly?
Aye.
Wheeler?
Aye. The ordinance is adopted. Thanks, Ty. Let's see. 54 has been moved to February. Item 55.
Authorize a competitive solicitation for price agreements for urgent rehabilitation of sanitary and storm sewers project for an estimated $6 million annually.
Commissioner Fish.
Mayor, I think we probably filed this with an optimistic time limit. We think this will take about an hour and a half, so we can just calibrate people's lunch plans. The Bureau of Environmental Services is responsible for repair and rehab of the city's sewer collection system. There are portions of our system that have deteriorated and require urgent attention. Without necessary repairs, property owners and businesses are likely to experience an emergency situation, such as a sewage release or backup. This ordinance builds on the success of the existing price agreement model that the city has used for sewer repair work. It also improves the Bureau's response time for urgent projects, and it supports the city's goals for minority women and emerging small business participation. With us today are Scott Gibson, Principal Engineer, and John Houle, Supervising Engineer from the Bureau of Environmental Services. Gentlemen.
Thank you. Good morning.
Morning.
As the Commissioner stated, this price agreement contract, which we're attempting to refresh, is a part of our sewer rehab program. We tend to approach the rehab of our sewers in 3 timelines: the planned neighborhood scale projects, which you see me present regularly. They're typically on a 3 to 5 year timeline. We also have emergencies in which we can react immediately. Once we get a declaration from our commissioner in charge, we can move out in a matter of days. What this urgent rehabilitation contract is about those that are in between, that can't wait 5 years to be addressed, but we are trying to get before an emergency. So that's what we're here to talk about today. The overall contracting objectives for this contract are to shorten the duration between design completion and the construction notice to proceed. We do that by procuring the contract in advance and negotiating task orders once the work is identified and ready to go into construction. We also realize reduced administrative costs to deliver these projects. It allows us to promptly repair the failed assets before they fail. And also, it's been an effective tool at helping us meet our disadvantaged minority women and emerging small businesses. In 2014, we procured the first of these contracts. The value was $9 million. One contract was awarded via an open competitive process. It's awarded based on the lowest responsible bidder. We renewed the contract for 2 additional consecutive years, and currently it's set to expire in June of 2018. 14 work orders were issued. They were valued at $9.2 million, and the average of these task orders was $700,000. The earned participation rate amongst certified firms was 20%, which met our goal. This contract also spanned the time when we changed from a target of 30% of the subcontracting to 20% of the total amounts. And because of the nature of this contract, we were able to adapt how we were dealing with that with our contractor as that was changed. So we found it to be a very flexible tool that helps us meet our targets. The proposed contract is an update to the original, and it incorporates our lessons learned. The contract value is $6 million for the first year. We could extend that contract for 2 additional 1-year periods. Multiple contracts are planned up to 2. It's our target to have 2 contractors. New contract limits will provide opportunities to increase the size of our work, and it supports 2 projects in our budget that are budgeted at $6 million per year, so that's how we set the target. Also, we'll continue to use this tool to manage our participation rate. One of the things we find is that having an ongoing contract with the contractor and then the task orders negotiated as the work comes, it moves us from a transactional relationship with our contractors where we're buying a repair for a certain amount to an ongoing relationship, and we find that we have more leverage in working with them, and we have a better partnership. So when it comes to meeting the targets, we've been better able to work together and meet those targets. So John Houle has an example here. He'd like to talk to you about one of our projects.
So this is a typical urgent project that we undertook and successfully completed. The 45th and Southeast 45th and Sherman Avenue. The project is located in the known as the Taggart D South Subbasin, sewer basin. And originally, the concrete sewer pipe was known to be discovered to have failed at several locations. And the history of maintenance response supporting this finding is listed there in terms of the number of backups, sinkholes repaired, broken pipes discovered, rodents, cavities documented. And during the history of this, prior to its being repaired, there were 10 call-outs by the Bureau of Maintenance. These are typical examples of the mechanisms of failure that we discover on many of our sewer pipes. You've seen these pictures before, but broken pipes, roots, intrusions, et cetera, which contribute to the failure modes and mechanisms. Now, the success of the project is outlined in these 3 bullet points. As Scott mentioned, the urgent delivery model that we follow allowed us to deliver this project within 8 weeks of its final design, which saves time and administrative expense prior to award and undertaking the work. The work order itself was comparable to the engineer's estimate, and this is a metric that we judge the competitiveness and the fairness and economy of the work being done for the residents and ratepayers. And this particular project had a 30% participation by the disadvantaged minority women in emergent small business class of contractors. And overall, as Scott mentioned, we achieved a 20% participation rate throughout the project that we currently have underway. Our schedule and budget for this, we're presenting our first reading today of this ordinance.
We skipped, I think, one of the slides, Scott.
Skip a slide?
Oh, we did?
It looks like one's missing. I apologize for that.
It's in your packet, colleagues.
Is it more photos of failing sewer lines?
No, it's photos of rodents with cavities. It's rodents with cavities before and after we introduced fluoride. And it's quite actually remarkable.
It's a series of dates, which John will relate to you just about our timing.
Back to the proposed budget and schedule. We hope following the when the ordinance becomes effective at the end of February, that we would advertise this project on the procurement website in early March. And if all things go as planned, we hope to award contracts by the middle of June of this year and award notice to proceed before the current contract expires. And the budgets proposed for this contract are shown 1 year at $6 million through year 3 if it's renewed. And the total estimated we would achieve a budget of up to $18 million.
That concludes our presentation, Mayor.
That's
very good.
Yes, thank you.
Any further questions for the panel? Any public testimony on this item?
No one signed up.
Very good. This is a first reading of a non-emergency ordinance. It moves to second reading. Thank you, Commissioner Fish. Looks like 57, please.
Declare city property located on Southwest Broadway and Southwest Grant as surplus and authorize its disposition.
This is a second reading, which means this is an item already discussed by council. We've
Mayor, can I
already
make
taken
one comment
public
before the vote?
testimony. Commissioner Fish.
I want to thank the mayor for tweeting the 4 slides that were not included in the PowerPoint, and I got your tweet, and I appreciate you doing that.
Very good. I'll pass that on. Thank you. Any further discussion or questions of staff since they were kind enough to be here? Very good. Please call the roll.
Fritz.
Well, hallelujah. I hope this is the last ordinance we will have before us about the Morris Marks House. Thank you very much to everybody who's been involved. Aye.
Fish.
I want to thank Todd on my team and everyone who worked on this. Morris Marks House is a treasure, and this is one of those rare incidents, times when there is really almost perfect alignment between different interests. And we were able to thread a needle, and we look forward to actually the house being firmly planted on its new home and then occupied. Aye.
Saltzman?
Yeah, great work to everybody involved in saving this historic house. Aye.
Udaly?
Aye.
Wheeler?
Thank you, Commissioner Fish, and to staff and to community members who took an active interest in this property. It's not every day we get the opportunity to cite what will obviously become an important landmark or continue to be an important landmark in our community. And I'm grateful that people made the effort required to actually preserve and protect this. So thank you, Commissioner Fish, and thank you to the team, and thanks to everybody who made this happen. I vote aye. The ordinance is adopted. Last item, 58.
Vacate a portion of Northwest Roosevelt Street between Northwest 29th and Northwest 30th Avenues, subject to certain conditions and reservations.
Again, this is a second reading, meaning this has already been brought before council. We've heard a presentation. We've already taken public testimony. Are there any further questions on this issue? Please call the roll.
Fritz?
Aye.
Fish?
Aye.
Saltzman?
Aye.
Udaly?
Aye.
Wheeler?
Aye. The ordinance is adopted, and we are adjourned.